Welcome back to Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson. Today we have a truly inspiring guest with us, John Hewitt. John's name has become synonymous with innovation and success throughout the accounting world, even though he doesn't have a traditional accounting background. He's built and sold billion-dollar companies like Liberty Tax and Jackson Hewitt, and he's been recognized as one of the most influential figures in the field. In our conversation, John shares his incredible journey, his insights on entrepreneurship, and what it takes to stand out in a crowded market. Whether you're considering venturing into self-employment or exploring the world of franchising, John's story and advice will offer invaluable guidance. So let's dive in and learn from someone who's been at the forefront of the industry for over 5 decades. Well, John, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today. And, when we were chatting earlier, you said you'd been recognized as one of the most influential people in accounting. But your journey is not your typical background in accounting, and you don't really have a background in accounting. So I figured we could start by talking a little bit about your journey to this recognition and, a little bit about your background and what you're doing.
Yeah, on January 1st, it'll be my 56th tax season. I started when I was at H&R Block while I was in college, loved it, and 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. I'd never taken an accounting course, but my dad was chief financial officer of a public company, and he had bought one of the first Apple computers that were ever made. In fact, it's in the Smithsonian today. So he liked it better than the mainframe that was running his public company. And he decided that we should computerize taxes. It took a long time to convince me, but after a year, we both quit our jobs and began developing software. We developed in 1981 the first software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. I got blessed and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. H&R Block had 9,000 offices. So I set my goal as to have 9,001 offices. We needed to add 8,995 offices. Well, we didn't quite get there, but we did change the name to Jackson Hewitt. We went public and sold it for 15 years later for $483 million. I had a 3-year non-compete, but my non-compete didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt had never gone to Canada. And having grown up in Buffalo, I did Canadian tax returns. I knew the Canadian tax systems. We opened Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years became a top 100 retail chain. So now I built one of the top 100 in U.S. and top 100 in Canada. And that's when I was first recognized by Accounting Today magazine as one of the most 100 influential people in accounting. They gave me that award for 12 years, even though I've never taken an accounting course. But came back to the United States in 2000 when my non-compete ended, and now I had to compete against my own name, my own software, my own people, my own system. And yet, not only did we grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years, top 10 fastest-growing franchisor ever. My second top 100 retail franchise chain in the United States. No one else has ever done that. Again, in public, and again, the stock became worth $500 million. And I sold my stock, and now we've started Loyalty Brands. And in Loyalty Brands, it's an umbrella of 8 different franchisors. We specialize in 3 things: construction, led by our roofing, siding, and solar; pets, everything pet, led by our mobile grooming service, which is #1 in the United States already in 3 years. It's called Zuma Grooming. And then, of course, my oldie but goodie income tax industry, tax and accounting, led by our A-Tax brand. Mm-hmm. So that's my 55 years in a nutshell.
What motivated you to kind of get into that entrepreneurship? You talked a little bit about that, but what was really enticing about getting out and getting into business for yourself?
I always give credit to that to my dad. My dad, I remember when I was only 5 or 6 years old, you can't even imagine a world without malls, but I saw my first shopping center in 1954, 55, and they weren't even shopping centers. Every shopping area was a downtown area, and in the United States. And I remember him with the next door neighbors designing a brushing kind of piece of equipment that would clean clean the parking lot of the shopping centers. Um, he always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and problem is he had too many children too quickly, and he grew up poor, lost both of his parents by the time I was born, and never had a chance to do it until I was 30 years old and I was working at Block, and now he had enough money and time to become self-employed. So my dad dragged me into it. I was happy at H&R Block, but I've been self-employed since 1981, and it's turned out pretty well for me. I founded a $500 million company, $1 billion company, and now this third company is going to be a $1 billion company.
Wow. I mean, that's really encouraging and exciting to hear your story. You know, and I think a lot of people who listen, or especially in today's day and age, there's a lot of crazy things going on in the markets. You know, you look at the political scene, you're like, what is going to happen in the future? And you know, if somebody's thinking about, and I know you work with lots of folks, you know, they're saying, hey, should I go into self-employment? Should I maybe do a franchise? Like, you know, franchising can be expensive or it can be successful, or should I, you know, stay as an employee? You know, what's the right career path? Like what are some questions they should be asking themselves, and how should they determine that?
You know, Adam, I do webinars occasionally, and I did a whole hour on should you be a entrepreneur? Should you go out on your own?
Yeah.
So I can't cover it quickly, but I can tell you the basics.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, that almost 2/3 of Americans want to be self-employed. And yet about half of them don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the risk taking is huge. Financial discipline is significant. Get up and go. There's no one, when you're self-employed, no one says get up and be at work at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or you got to work 5, 6, 7 days a week. And there's no one pushing. You are, you know, it's my favorite 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. And most people need that structure, need that guidance, need security. And so most businesses fail. And one reason is because too many people try to go into business that were never meant to be self-employed. So, and I feel good about that in the sense that if I didn't have workers, then I would have to do a lot more work. So I need people that need a structured environment, a paycheck every week, guaranteed paycheck every week. I need those kind of people to do the work. And so I thank God for them. But yeah, it takes a whole hour. But think of, those are the key factors: self-starting, independent, driven, risk taker.
Would you say that's the same thing for somebody who is going to self-employment or franchising, or is it different? Is it a different type of person?
Well, franchising is a little easier because you have your structure and your system laid out for you. So you know the rules, and you know what time you have to open, close, how much you charge, how much you pay the employees. So we have a term in franchising called intrapreneur, not entrepreneur. You're working by yourself, but inside a system. So more people can be a franchisee than be independently, like a mom and pop.
Yeah, it's because you have you have that safety net a little bit of the overarching organization.
Exactly. That is very meaningful and a huge difference maker to many people.
Yeah. Well, and based on your description, I'm sure a lot of people listen to that and saying, you know what, I don't want to be self-employed because I don't want to have to be the one answering all the questions. But then the other people might get excited and say, I'm willing to jump with 2 feet. And it's hard because there's so many other factors. If you have a family, you know, how much seed money, all those different things that you have to consider.
Yeah. And when we evaluate a potential applicant to join us, the first thing we look for is to answer that question. You know, that it's, are you meant to be self-employed? If you already have, then that answers it. Or if you haven't, then we look for, are there other factors like your parents were self-employed, or your siblings were self-employed, or you showed signs of self-employment when you were a child. You mowed lawns, or you had a paper route, or you sold lemonade, or you did entrepreneurial things throughout your life. So we look for signs of that show that you are meant to be self-employed.
Do you think that some people are more naturally inclined to being self-employed than others?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And it may be, I'm not sure it is, it's not inborn. I'm not sure you're not born into it. You can learn it, I'm sure. but the major characteristics tend to start from.
Mhm. Yeah. When you and I were chatting previously, you had mentioned a little bit about, advisory services seems to be taking over the accounting world. What opportunities do you think is out there for, especially for accountants, especially from what you've seen?
Yeah, there's so many regulations and rules and more in our government that just paddling through the water, just the journey is so treacherous. And sometimes you need guidance as to what to avoid more than guidance as to where to go, because there are all kinds of dangerous, treacherous waters out there that you have to avoid. They say the people that are the most successful have made the most errors. So I think that an advisory service can take lessons learned and then take them to their clients and help them avoid the deep water over here and the White River Rapids over here and the waterfall over there, and teach them to get through with a lot less risk and a lot more prosperously.
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking about as you were talking about your history, especially with all the successful organizations that you've started and then sold, when it comes to getting your name out there, like marketing, what advice would you give to somebody who is saying, hey, I want to get into this, but how do I get my name out there? How do I do all those things?
That is incredibly difficult. There are 35 million businesses in this country, and since COVID, there's been a record number of new businesses per year that are starting. And so when you think about it, there's 35 million businesses trying to get your attention. And there's about one business for every 10 people. So here in Virginia Beach, there's 50,000 people. That means there's 65,000 businesses trying to get your attention. And they're all thinking the same thing. And how do I build up brand name? So the key is you have to have differentiator. You have to do something different. And we have a whole part of all of our brands it's called guerrilla marketing. And there's an excellent book that I read 30 years ago called Guerrilla Marketing. So I would advise anyone, if you're thinking about an inexpensive way to get brand name, to read the book Guerrilla Marketing. I mean, you could do it by showing up at parades, by Chamber of Commerce events, by what we do, a couple things that virtually no one else does, and it's so simple. When I started Liberty Tax, I love the name Liberty because it's so iconic. And so, it gives you a positive feeling, right? And people think of the Statue of Liberty. So what we did is we put costume Lady Liberty characters dancing out in front of our locations. Well, when you think about it, in Virginia Beach, there's 65,000 businesses, but there's only 2 or 3 that have costume characters standing out in front waving. So do you want to be one of the 3 or one of the other 65,000? So you need to find differentiators, and guerrilla marketing is one way to do that. And we have specialized in growing brand name rapidly. And so for our new ATAX brand that competes with H&R Block and Liberty, we have an eagle costume, and we love the eagle concept because it's such a powerful, renowned. It's the American bird, right? It's the bald eagle, and so we have it has a friendly feeling, and we have eagles out on the street dancing, and so we gain brand name very quickly. Past hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses on their way to work. The people that do go to work. Most of them can't name 10% of it. But if you saw an eagle waving at you every day from January 1st to April 15th, boy, that'd be one of the businesses you'd remember.
That's for sure. Well, I think the hard part nowadays is a lot of people are at home. They're not necessarily driving around all the time, and trying to make yourself a differentiator online is even harder, because there may be 65,000 businesses in Virginia Beach, but on the web, there's probably billions.
Right. Everyone in the world is trying to get your attention.
Yeah. And so it's even harder. So finding that differentiator has got to be even more difficult in the online space, I'm sure.
I'm sure. No doubt. But we do things different. Can't tell all my secrets, but we do have things that we think of that are novel.
Yeah, of course. So when somebody's looking at being an entrepreneur, going into self-business, or even franchising, there's one thing that you said, you want to challenge people to be all they can be. Are there times where you've felt that challenge or felt that pressure and you've had to get out of your comfort zone? And what are some lessons you learned from that? Because I'm sure it wasn't all sunshine and roses the whole time you were building these organizations.
Are there times I'm uncomfortable? I'm uncomfortable every day. And I think that's the key word is to, if you do what you always did, you get what you ever got. So you have to do things that are different. You cannot be extraordinary without being uncomfortable. You cannot be extraordinary without suffering. So if you want to be normal and avoid discomfort and do the same old, well, you can do that. And unfortunately, most people do. More than half of the people do that. But if you want to be the greatest you can be and change the world and make it a better place and be extraordinary, then you said the key word. You have to be uncomfortable.
So what does that look like for somebody who says, I want to do this, I feel like I can do this, but they're not quite in a leadership role. They might not be quite ready to go out on their own. What advice would you give them to take those steps forward?
What we try to do with people that are in a decision-making situation is we say, the least you should do is come and work in one of our branches for a week or 2 weeks. Take time off. Could be all on weekends. It could be take a week or two off from work. But come and we will immerse you in you can try it. Try before you buy. And that will ensure that it fits with your comfort zone. I mean, we had a person come to training. This is the first time that it ever happened to me and I've been doing this for 55 years, but a person came to train 2 months ago and they were so scared that they went home and sat in a closet. And I mean, they were just petrified. And so we gave them the money back because the prospect of being self-employed was just so overwhelming. They just were, just horrified. So yeah, they put your toe in the water. Come and work with us. Come and work in the environment that you're seeking. I mean, we all can spend some time exploring opportunities and explore the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a decision you can just say, all right, I'm going to be self-employed tomorrow. It takes time. So I like that determination of saying, hey, just go dip your toe in the water, try it out. Because you might try it out and say, you know what, this isn't for me. I might need to do something else.
And probably half the time you will.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's first go doesn't become a $500,000 organization either. It takes time to build things.
Yeah, only 5% of the country become millionaires. So, I mean, you got to be in the top percentage of people but the good news is if you get to be part of a great franchise system, you have the tools, because half of the tools of making it is having a excellent system. And the other half is people.
So you have the system, and then you have to hire people. So when somebody comes and has a franchise, do they, buy into the franchise, and then did they hire the people after that? Like, how does that? Can you walk me through what that looks like?
Yeah, almost always. Occasionally, people will come with a group of employees already from some other. I mean, for example, someone that worked at H&R Block had 2 other friends that worked at H&R Block, and so they acquire a tax franchise, and then the friends come along with them. So there's an occasion but that's rare. It's mostly just a single independent person or 2 that partner. Sometimes there's partners and they'll come on board, but bring in employees probably only 5% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have to hire from scratch, which is a good thing in the sense that they don't have any bad habits. And I find that if we're doing things different and you've been doing things a different way, boy, it's really true about not being able to teach an old dog new tricks.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. And when you're hiring new people, you have a chance to start at the ground level, building a good foundation for the franchise that you're a part of.
Right. And to understand your philosophy of exceeding customers' expectations. And really, that's what this is all about. One of my favorite authors, Stan Phillips, wrote a book on customers and the way you treat customers. And first of all, he said, no one arrives at a meeting exactly on time. You're either early or late. So if the meeting's 6 o'clock, you're there at 5:54 or 6:02, or almost no one comes in exactly at the strike of 6. He said, in the same manner, you don't meet customers' expectations. You either exceed them or fail to meet them. You rarely exactly meet their expectations. So each owner has a level of exceeding customers' expectations that they strive for. And each employee responsibility is to understand that and help them get to that level.
So what are some strategies to kind of build that culture within an organization? Say, hey, we're here to exceed their expectations every single time.
Yeah, I learned that. And Tom Watson Sr. said it, founder IBM, said it extremely well. He said, give me 100 great engineers or give me 100 people with great attitude. He said, I'll take the people with great attitude. You can teach engineering. You can't teach attitude. And so when we look to hire new people, we don't look at their skills first. We look at their attitude and see if they'll fit in with the culture of our organization. Because different people have different ideas of acceptable customer service. I mean, I love doing this example that when I'm teaching a group, sometimes I'll say, I want you 10 right here to tell me if you went into a restaurant, how long, and you went to the front desk, how long would it take and there was no one there? Or they were on the phone. How long would you be acceptable for before they would recognize you? You have to tell it in seconds, and you can't use round numbers like 5 or 10 or 20 or 30. And they'll give me 10 answers, and they're amazingly different. Some people will wait 5 minutes, and they're not upset. Some people won't wait 2 seconds, and they're upset. So if that's the way they feel about being treated themselves, then that's how they're going to treat customers. And so you hire for attitude, and you judge them on what's acceptable to them on the way that they want to be treated. And do they have just the highest level of expectation? Or do they think, well, if the person gets around to me in 5 minutes, I'm fine with that. Then that's, to me, that's not likely great customer service theater.
Well, that's not something, I mean, I guess it is something you can teach some people, but not everybody can be taught that, especially when it comes to customer service.
Exactly. There are some people that you're just never going to change and are going to be complacent. And they just are rule followers. You know, I believe that principles are more important than rules. And we make that clear in our companies. For example, one time I had a rule, I let the CFO make a rule that the franchisees could only call the accounting department and talk to an employee from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. One of his new clerks, accounts payable clerk, gets a call at 4:15, and somehow the franchisee had got through the switchboard and got to them past the magic 4 p.m. And she said, I can't, it's after 4, I can't talk to you, and hung up the phone. And that violates our principles, but she clearly put the silly rule above the customer. And the principle is happy, successful franchisees. That does not make a happy, successful anything when you hang up the phone on them. So there was repercussions for that you need to, most people or many people will fall back on rules to avoid offering exceptional service. And I'll tell you that the exceptional service in the United States has declined every year as long as I can remember, since long before you were born. That every year the quality of service goes down, on average goes down and down and down.
And we could speculate on why that's happening, I'm sure, for a long time. But it is interesting, especially with the instant gratification that our society brings with all the technology that we have. Everybody wants something right now. And it's a balance of principles versus rules versus just understanding that somebody has a different situation that you, and you should just take a breath before you blow up at them. And I think that's a individual thing. That's hard to teach. You have to learn that.
Yeah, it's frustrating to me to be, I had one girl that I dated a long time ago, and she would frequently send the meal back when she got it was too hot, done incorrectly, dirty plate. I mean, or she would complain. And I said, I'm not going to put up with your complaints. It makes me uncomfortable. So let's say that they served you something you didn't like. Then just ask them for another dish or another version and don't complain about it. Just let it go. I mean, let's say that she didn't like the fish. Well, then instead of complaining about it and whining about it, just say, I'd like a steak, and get a steak. I'd rather pay for the extra fish than make a scene in a restaurant. That's so uncomfortable for me. And I choose to define my support of a business by footsteps. So if I get bad service, I'm just not going back. I mean, I'm not gonna, and I'm not gonna complain to someone who's just a clerk. I mean, it's just the waitress or the maitre d'. I mean, they have no power. Why am I mean, and I'm bothering everyone around me. And it's just that, I mean, the waitress didn't cook the food, and why are you making that? So that I feel very uncomfortable about that. But some people love doing that. They love teaching businesses a lesson.
John, I think this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on the Count Me In podcast and just sharing a little bit of your knowledge and a little bit of your wisdom with our audience. And I just, thank you again so much for coming on.
It was a great pleasure, Adam. Thank you.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.